Hello and welcome to episode 53 of Crucible Bootcamp. I'm your host, King Koala, and today we're going to be taking a look at another Rumble match sent to us by Night Stalker by the name of Ultra Oculus. He's from the Crucible Radio Slack, so shout outs to you guys for sending me stuff to review. So we can all improve together. Like I said, this is going to be another Rumble match, and it's on Exodus Blue. And some topics we're going to be covering today are really good diving into shadestep, both offensive and defensive uses of it, as well as some discussions on what it means to zone someone, both passively zone them and actively zone them, depending on what exactly it is you want to do with your opponent, as well as combining the idea of a zone with your abilities and your weapons. And finally, some proper utilization of sidearms in Rumble, especially since they're so popular nowadays. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So, Exodus Blue, covered this a little bit last time, but again, our philosophy on Rumble now that special is so constricted, is really control those boxes. And the way you control boxes with the sidearm specifically, you can see he's using IS Luna and a sidearm here. The way you control those boxes with the sidearm is you have to play very, very aggressively. And you really want to get into either proper hand cannon range or proper sidearm range before they can pick up that box. Now this is going to change a little bit once the patch hits. If you're watching this in the future, it would be tomorrow, but it'll be 28th of March. So the patch is going to change that your weapons are going to automatically reload when you pick up that green box. So it's going to be a little bit harder to challenge that box in shotgun range if they have a shotgun out and ready when they pull the box with a sidearm. But as long as you keep that distance, you keep that good space, then we're going to be good. So I think I am not running the program we need to run. There we go. So we're going to see him push under B, going through train lane. He's in C boxes now. So he's kind of trying to look for targets. So this is good movement, right? The little slide there. We want to be sliding out so we can check these angles here, which is good. This is the kind of play that we want to be doing. That's what I like to see. And the important thing to keep in mind, so we're going to dive right into shade stepping. The important thing to keep in mind is that the reason you run shade step is because what you want to do is shore up your positional errors, because it gives you a lot of room to move around and to make up for the fact that if you over push, right? If we slid out here and there were two people here and then maybe there's a guy here, if you over push like that, then what you can do is you can shade step back into your cover immediately. Whereas on other classes, if we push out like that, if we end up in this zone here and we're not a class with shade step, right? We have blink, or we're Titan and we're skating. We don't have the opportunity to really turn around and instantly move back to our cover. That's not going to happen, because we're going to have to turn, we're going to have to start sprinting away, and we're going to have to slide. So we don't have that freedom of movement that Night Stalker does. So if you're not being very active with your shade step use, that's what you really want to get used to on Night Stalker. You want to be doing it all the time. And the cadence of it, if you run Yolders, so you don't run into the sprint lock, is you want to slide, shade step. So as you move around the map, a lot of people tend to move too quickly, and that's a big struggle for a lot of people, is that they just move too fast around the map, and you find yourself still moving by the time you get into an engagement. So if you break up your movement into slides and shade steps, that's going to slow down how the map plays for you, and you're going to be able to better traverse it, be able to better set up an angle, just be more aware of your surroundings, because you're going to be playing slower. So slide, shade step, slide, shade step. You won't run into a sprint lock. If you do, it's because you're just very, very fast at sliding and follow-up shade stepping. But for the most part, if you take your time, it's sort of like a wave. You know, it'll come up as you're sliding and go down as you finish your shade step, and then it'll just come up and down. And you'll flow around the map sort of in short, quick bursts. So he goes to challenge. You know, really good pacing on his shots, right? He only shot 3 times, which is really good for ammo efficiency. It means he doesn't really necessarily need to reload for his next kill. And you can see our hero's already off and running, trying to find another target. So you can see someone ends up spawning behind him. And this is really good positioning. So I want to point out this positioning is, you notice that this wall is right here, right? And you saw on his radar that, you know, someone's right behind him and someone's in front of him. So it might not be intentional on his part, but he's right behind. There's a pillar that basically looks like this. Right behind him, that's going to cut off shots to his back. And there's also a little fallen piece of architecture that comes up like this. Also, let's see, let's try. It's going to be more here. So really, his back is very protected. So this is good positioning for both areas that popped up on our radar. So he's going to turn, he's going to challenge this person that ended up spawning behind him. And he just walks right out, right? It's very obvious that his opponent, you know, he's moving out in towards the train special. He has a good angle. He has a good escape route, right? That's important too. He has a very good, easy way to just shade step back in case his opponent gets first shot off, or in case he gets spooked or someone else shows up. Any of that happens, he's a very clear way to leave. So he starts with a smoke, ends up tagging it. And something to keep in mind is you want to make sure you know how much your smoke does when it sticks someone and what follow-up damage will actually kill. That way we don't run into this issue here, which is rather minor, but if we knew that a headshot and a stuck smoke killed, then we wouldn't have to use this grenade here. So keep in mind that your stuck smoke is going to do as much as a melee. You know, it's going to do at least 122, which means if you hit that headshot with your hand cannon, your 86 to the head, it's just going to finish off your target. So we want maximum efficiency. We want to keep in mind that we have certain tools that let us do certain things as we move around the battlefield. Now, as a Night Stalker, it's really important that after you finish these kills, you utilize that shade step if you haven't already, because what you want to do after every single engagement is immediately push back into your cover, right? That's always what we're thinking about. We're thinking, well, how can I move back into cover? And shade step is great at that because you immediately move, you know, you break all aim assist on your opponent, so if someone's aiming at you, it becomes very difficult to hit you, and you're just shade stepping right back into cover. So after every single engagement, it's good to get into the habit of just shade stepping into a piece of cover. Very rarely is it going to hurt you to do that, right? It'll very rarely put you completely out of position, and it gets you used to moving around and shade stepping a lot. And the more you shade step, the more you get out of the class. Because if you're not shade stepping on Night Stalker, you're much better off running Blade Dancer. You're much better off running Gunslinger because you're not utilizing that huge piece of the kit. And you're just better off using things with, you know, a slightly better grenade or a melee you're more comfortable with, or a super that's much more reliable. There's a lot of things that come into play if you decide, you know, shade step isn't for me. But if you want to use it, you want to use it often as you can. It should be on cooldown a lot as you move around this map. That second slide, you want to finish that with a shade step, right? We can shade step this direction here. We can shade step around this pillar and get a better angle towards a ramp. We can get a better angle towards the Poga area, towards a field. Instead, by moving towards the center here, even though no one shows up this time, if we move towards this area here, we get exposed from the same spots that we can better cover from behind the pillar. So if we can potentially get shot from both of these positions if we move in front like this. So you want to be careful of that. Part of that is reading your radar as well. We can see that there wasn't anyone on radar when we were moving around, so that's a safe maneuver. And here we saw just, I want to point this out, even though this ends in him being shotgunned, which is, again, a rarity nowadays, but he does something that every player should do if you're unfamiliar or uncomfortable with your radar reading, right? So right here you can see that there's a little radar reading right here right now. And it's kind of broken up. So the person is basically in this kind of general area here. So if the person is in this area and you don't necessarily know exactly where they are, right? They could be just around the corner here in B. They could be on the slope leading down lower trains. They could be in the train lane proper. There's a lot of different locations they can be in, even though, you know, you just have this general area reading on your radar. You can see Oculus is gonna just wiggle back and forth just a little bit, right? He turns his camera a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and that gives him a better idea of where his target is going to be, because you can see where the center fulcrum is of the radar, so it's gonna move on that pivot point, right? So you can get a good idea of exactly where this target is if you just wiggle that camera. So you really want to take advantage of how that radar works. So he ends up getting shotgunned. That's fine. If the target is that close, it might have been better to have your sidearm out. But because you were going more for a radar reading and going for that solid primary engagement, which is sort of the common ground, the most common thing that's going to happen now in the game, you really want to focus on getting in that engagement space the best you can for the weapon type you have. Now here, this is sort of a this engagement that happens here is a decision that a lot of players in a higher level would make very differently. Like I would make what I do from the position that you are in here, I would make that differently. In players that are in lower to average skill level, they're going to make a completely different decision, and we're going to go over both of those now. But it happens to be, we're going to just touch a little bit on finishing the engagements you start. So there's different ways that you can finish the engagements you start. One of them is you let your enemy make a mistake, right? They're weak, they pull out of their cover, you punish them for it. The other is you push your advantage, right? So right here, we're going to see that we have a rather large health advantage on our, or we have about an even amount of health to our opponent, right? He's taken 179, and we've taken, I would say that was a headshot and a body shot, so probably, what is that, 142, right? So we have a 30 hit point advantage over our opponent. We can basically hit him, tag him with like a 2 ticks of our smoke, and he'll die. He has to get another full body shot on us. So slightly easier for us because we can dip in and out of cover real quick to get that finish that engagement. But there's two ways that we can go about doing this. The first way is we can finish the engagement by chasing down our opponent. Now we can either do this by the obvious way, where we just saw them, or the non-obvious way, where he might go. So the easiest way to get punished in these situations where we're both weak, we both know each other's weak, and we both know where the guy is, right? We know the guy's here, he knows where we are. We have to decide, well, what are we going to do about that? So more often than not, at the lower skill levels, it's expected that you go the obvious way, right? It's expected that you push straight forward at your target, and then it just becomes a matter of who has better reaction time, right? Or who has a better idea of where they're coming from. In this particular instance, you only have one lane to go down, right? Right through field. And the person you're attacking could be in multiple locations. They could have moved out more towards the Bravo spawn. They could be moved out towards the train car that's here. They could even be pushed out further to the right towards the water tank. Our opponent has a lot of options. But what you want to do is you want to cut off any escape route that they have and give yourself an opportunity to recover as well in case they want to get away. It's okay that you don't completely finish an engagement, especially in things like trials, because if you get into an engagement in trials and your opponent gets away, where are they probably going to? They're probably regrouping with their team, So it's okay to let them go, and you're both weak, right? You just have to keep in mind, well, now you both know the general idea of where you are, and if they're going to regroup with their teammates, you also have to go regroup with your teammate. Now, Rumble's a little bit different. Rumble, we want those kills. We want to hunt our opponent down. So really, they can't run away from you. They have to go and hide to get their health back. Because if they run away from you, they're going to run into another engagement, and they're going to be too weak to really finish that engagement. So one or both of you have to decide, well, we need to finish this engagement. So what you can do instead of going straight forward is we can go through this direction here, and we can cut off their escape route. Because if they want to stay close and hidden, there's very few places that they're going to be able to go safely, right? This is essentially going to be a safe zone back here in the Bravo spawn, because no one's going to spawn there. They're already there. Even though they're weak, people are likely going to spawn on this portion of the map. So if we avoid that, we can predict that our opponent's going to go to the left. So what do we want to do? We want to go to the left. Now, as you get higher and higher in skill level, these decisions, basically, you have to play them more by ear and decide, well, how is my opponent really going to move? Are they going to expect me to go the non-obvious way? And they're going to bait me by moving this direction here and waiting for me to pop out? Or, are they going to go the obvious way? And then if they go this direction, maybe I can sweep around this way because they're going to expect me to go this direction, or they're not going to expect me to do this. There's lots of different layers that you're going to get into as you get higher and higher up. Which is also why a lot of the times when you see higher level play, there's these huge gaps of time where no one's doing anything, right? They're just inching forward, just little by little, to gain what little map ground that they can. Because players at that level don't make the same mistakes that players like you or I would make, right? They're not going to take the obvious route. They're going to wait for you to make a mistake, and they're going to capitalize on it. And they're always, I wouldn't say always, but almost always, they're going to be able to do something about that capitalization, right? It's not just going to be they're going to move forward and die because they didn't expect you to be there. They're going to move forward. They're going to know exactly where to look. They're going to have a general idea of where your head's going to be if they need a headshot. They're going to know, okay, I have a grenade. I can do this, this, or this. So he's going to take the non-obvious route and go to cut off his escape route. So he has a little smoke there, and his opponent ends up getting cleaned up by someone else, which is fine. What we don't want to do necessarily is push into the location where we know that opponent just killed him where we know an opponent is that just killed our opponent, because our other opponent, because they're going to have a good angle on us, right? If we come out into this area here, we're completely exposed. And with shadestep, you can do this, right? There's a lot of things that you can do with shadestep that you can't do with other classes. So if you wanted to, you could push out here to go challenge the person that's somewhere in this general area. But as soon as you get out, if you get hit, right? If you get hit and you haven't returned fire, shadestep lets you just immediately push back. So you get to scout a lot. This particular example isn't the greatest, just because if you do try to scout like this and you get hit, you're cornered, right? You're in a tube. There's only two places you can go, and likely someone is spawning behind you already, so you're trapped and you have to kill your way out. We don't really want to put ourselves in very many positions like that. That's not very effective. But just keep that in mind. Like, if this wasn't an area where you're in a tube, then you could make this maneuver where you push out, you scout a little bit, maybe you get hit, that's okay. You just shadestep back. And then you go reposition. You get your health back. Things like that. So let's talk about zoning a little bit now, because this is a good example of what we are trying to do against our opponent. So first, let's talk about passive zoning. So the idea of passive zoning is using our weapons and using our abilities, or using our super, or melee, or grenade, whatever it is, but it's going to be predicated on our opponent doing something. Passive play is all reactive. We can't play passively effectively if our opponent never does anything. So our opponent has to make all the first moves, and then we have to react to whatever they're doing. In essence, this is our opponent is asking us a lot of questions, right? Hey, if I move here, what are you going to do about it? Hey, if I shoot you from this position, what are you going to do about it? Hey, if I waste a grenade in this position, what are you going to do about it? A passive player has to have all the answers. So if they waste a grenade, well, now I know I can push you with my shotgun. If they waste a smoke, you know that you can just barrel down a different angle. If they are running an auto rifle and we're in scout range, we know that we're going to outgun you every time. We have the answers to whatever questions they're asking us. So this idea of a passive zone is we're using our abilities and our guns to basically mark off a spot that says you can't go here, and if you do, you're probably going to die. So smoke is a perfect example of a way to use passive zoning as well as a spike grenade, because you have to keep in mind that this, with smoke, now that the smoke is out, this zone here, where the smoke is active, is a danger zone for our opponent, right? And so essentially, if I'm the opponent that's out here that just got this kill, I do not want to go to this area, right? I want to go around either direction, or I just want to wait it out. So in that way, you're passively locking off a location of this map where if they come in, they die, right? If they go and walk in the smoke, you're going to have a huge advantage over them, and you're going to punish them for that. And this goes not only for smokes, but grenades as well. If you land your spike grenade here and it points this direction, well, essentially this entire area is now off limits. They can't go this way. So it creates an opportunity to make your opponents be very predictable. They're only going to do two things, right? Or I guess three things. They're either going to stay where they are, and they're going to wait out the zone. They're going to move around the zone, right? Either way. Or they're going to retreat. Those are their three options, right? So they stay still here, they retreat, or they move around the zone. If they ever come into the zone, right? If they ever walk here, then they're dead. Like, that's what you want them to do. You want them to walk into the zone that you're locking down. Now, when we talk about passive zoning with weapons, it means that you're in your effective range, right? So for hand cannons, this is a good opportunity to be in effective range. We know that we're most likely going to, based on our radar reading here, because they're in that 8 to 24 meters? 23 meters, that's what it is. 8 to 23 meters. And we know that that's our bread and butter for hand cannons, right? That's where we're going to do max damage, and that's where we're going to have the best accuracy, right? So this range here, our weapon is going to be effective in this range. So we can wait here and passively lock down this zone. But what our weapon isn't going to be able to do is lock down a zone that's further out. So if our opponent is way out here, right, around the edge here, we're not going to be able to cover them. So your weapon zone is very limited in what it can cover effectively. And with your abilities, your zone of control is very long. It's much longer than a lot of your weapons go, because unless you're using something like a scout rifle or like a very high range pulse rifle, because you can throw your smoke, you can throw your grenade, you can activate your super, and you have this huge zone where you're dangerous or where it's not okay to go because they're going to be weakened. But if you're using something like an auto rifle or a hand cannon, that zone where you're dangerous is very limited. So that's passive, right? We're just waiting for everyone to come to us. Now, active is a little bit different. We can still utilize the same tools, but instead of us providing all the answers that our opponent is questioning us about, right? If I go here, what are you going to do about it? Now you're the one asking the question. So this is a very proactive way to play. Active zoning is all about understanding what your things do and how you can use them to be lethal when you want them to be. So you use them as a way to answer whatever your opponent is doing right away. Or you tell your opponent, hey, I'm going to throw a smoke at you, and you either need to figure out how to leave real fast or you're going to die. So when I talk about you need to save your smoke for when someone shows up because you can defend yourself that way, that's active zoning, because you're creating a zone that's dangerous around you that isn't apparent to your opponent. Your opponent doesn't know exactly when you have an ability up or not. The only thing that they know you have up or not is your super, because your level flashes yellow. That's it. if they don't see that, they don't know if you have an ability up. They don't know how much gun ammo you have in your chamber. They don't know any of that. That's all assumed knowledge. That's not. They don't have that perfect knowledge that you do about your character. You know when your abilities are up. You know how much ammo you have in your gun. If you don't, you need to be checking it. But you're basically creating a zone where the same concept as passive zoning, except now everything you're doing when it's going to be effective immediately. There's no I'm waiting for you to show up in my zone and I'm going to punish you for it. I'm going to actively put myself in harm's way to make my abilities very effective, and I'm just going to use them when I see you. They're going to have immediate effect, and if you don't account for it, you're going to lose, right? So when I say save your smoke for when you see someone, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you moving into someone aggressively or assertively, knowing and having the back of your mind that, like, when I get there, I'm going to stick him with a smoke and I'm going to finish him off with that headshot, and that's going to be that. There's going to be, there's no mystery about it, and there's going to be a zone that moves around your character as opposed to a zone that exists on the map, right? So let's illustrate this in the map a little bit differently. So if our character is in C Alley here, and we throw a smoke here, this is our passive zone, right? That's our passive zone. But if our character moves out here and we still have that smoke, where we can throw the smoke is where our active zone is. So if we can throw our smoke anywhere in this radius here, this entire area is an area that we can zone off, right? Anyone that shows up in this huge area here is going to be in a lot of trouble because we're just going to be able to immediately finish them off very easily. Same thing with let's take spike grenade now, for instance. If we're here, right, then we can throw our spike grenade in this direction here, covering this spot. We can throw it, out here, basically covering a straight line. But if instead we move out here, then our spike grenade can go this direction here. It can be aimed this way. It can be aimed this way. It can be aimed here. It can be aimed on this wall going this direction. It can be on this tanker going this direction. So you see, instead of having these lines that basically looks like this, right? That's our zone. Instead, our zone is expanded a lot, right? Our zone goes all the way into these different locations all over the place. So that's an active zone, and it's going to move with your character, right? If we move to a new location, then that spike grenade is going to be lethal in a lot of different ways, right? Again, this is our active zone that we can challenge players in. So that spike grenade there is another example of a passive zone, right? He's just saying, hey, you can't come here anymore. Now here we just run out of ammo and missed too many shots. So we can let's touch a little bit on some proper sidearm usage. So let's go all the way back to when he pulls out his sidearm. So again, here, this is a good opportunity. This is a passive zone, right? Our opponent can't pass here. So basically, this area here is locked off. We have a very clear exit. We should be shade stepping away here. We do it a little bit late. That's okay. So when our opponents are pushing us and we decide to pull out our sidearm, you don't need to ADS in this close. Because when your opponent's pushing into you and they're this close, you want to hip fire. Because you only need to hit the body twice to follow up melee and kill them. The Wormwood does 60 to the head and 40 to the body. If you hit them to the body twice, that's 80 damage. That added to your 122 melee is going to kill everyone except for the highest armor. That's just a fact. So because you only need to hit 2 shots, what you don't want to do is you don't want to ADS in like this, because your ability to adjust to what your opponent is doing is going to be lowered, right? You have lower aim speed when you ADS in. You have very fast aim speed when you're hip fired. And you still take advantage of aim assist when you're hip fired. The difference is that, when you're hip firing, the effective range of your weapon is actually cut down quite significantly. But when your opponent is in melee range, you would never notice that. that cut, because they're always going to be in effective range and melee range. Every weapon is effective in melee range. Doesn't matter what weapon it is. So you're always going to get that benefit of aim assist, and hipfire, you don't get that detriment of having to aim slower and trying to track your target, because when they're that close, they're probably jumping up and down like our opponent is right now. They're moving side to side, they're moving up and down, so that's two different directions that you have to account for, and that's a lot easier to deal with when you're hip fired as opposed to when you have to slow down when you're ADS'd in. Now, if you run with really high sensitivity, then you won't notice this as much as if you ran low sensitivity. And I would say the vast majority of players are running somewhere between 3 and 5 sensitivity. That's pretty much the norm. So if you're running those sensitivities, it's going to be better for you to hip fire in these situations. That's how you want to use your sidearm, and sometimes you even want to use your hand cannon like that. You want to trust your hip fire. Your aim doesn't suddenly get better when you ADS in. Maybe you feel more confident, maybe it feels stickier to you, but really you aim just as well in hip fire. You just have to trust that you're going to hit the shots that you know you're already going to hit. That isn't to say you should hip fire all the time, but when these situations come up where it is more effective to hip fire, you should feel comfortable and willing to take advantage of that and utilize that ability. So if we had hip fired here instead of ADS'd in, by the time we had tracked our opponent, we would have actually put a lot of good damage on them or not moved out of melee range, right? So we never needed to lose that particular engagement. So here, we're kind of on radar. That's a really good scouting shade step. That's something you want to do. Again, some more passive zone play. Basically saying we can't go here, you can't go here. We take out one of our opponents. So here in this situation, it would have been a lot better if we shade stepped away. Normally, when you kill someone, the area around where you just killed that player is safe. So you want to actively move towards those locations because that's generally going to be your best opportunity to try to get your health back. Most of the time, you don't want to try to immediately push a second target unless you know that they're not paying attention to you, because things like this are going to happen, right? Even though I think we missed one shot there. When you put yourself in a situation where you have to be perfect, it puts a lot of pressure on you, and we don't necessarily want that. We want to make sure that our engagements are easy, like that, right? Our opponent wasn't watching us. We had really nice pacing of our shots, and there was no pressure. Those are the kind of situations that you want to put yourself under. So that was a really good shutdown because we saw earlier that guy's on a 10 kill streak. So if we want to catch up, that's the guy we want to focus on. Again, more passive zoning here. Really, really good passive zoning too. Like, this is how you want to utilize your smoke to lock down zones. So this is a kind of a weird sequence where, like, we just get a free kill, which is good. We're not holding on to our super. We haven't reloaded our gun though. So here we can't really take full advantage of a 2 headshot on our hand cannon. We do get the triple body shot, so we basically turn our sidearm into year 1 last word when people are tethered. It's really nice. But it might have even been a little bit easier if we just paid a little bit more attention to our ammo count. Again, not a huge deal, but these little mistakes add up over time. So we want to make sure we're working on all those little mistakes and only making bigger mistakes that are a little bit harder to tackle, right? So as our opponent pushes us, this is how you want to use a sidearm. Like, this is textbook. If you use a sidearm in today's meta, or you're a kind of a sidearm kid and you like them all, you just like them, that engagement there is what you want to replicate. If someone is pushing you and they're going to fly over the top of you like that, that is your opportunity to punish them. Sidearms are one of the best weapons outside, right next to shotguns, at punishing your opponent for moving into you. I would say shotguns are the best at that, and then sidearms, and then fusions. Just because fusions, you don't have the immediate kill, and there's a lot of inconsistency with it. Obviously, snipers are the worst because you have to have perfect aim in that range. Really hard to do. But sidearms, that's where you want to be. And most importantly, when he got pushed like that, I'm going to rewind this a little bit. When he's pushed, he moves back, right? He doesn't follow the push. He doesn't match the push with his opponent. So you see our opponent's here, and he's pushing, you know, at an angle towards us. What a sidearmer doesn't want to do is push into them. Like, this is not what you want to do, because you run the risk of running into a shotgun, or more commonly, if you push in, you're just going to be end up resulting in a trade because they're going to be in melee range. So you want to skirt melee range. As long as you're outside of melee range, you're good. So that means that sidearms are less effective against Stormcallers because their melee range is extended. That's an even larger amount of space that you have to worry about. And the space that you would engage with a sidearm in against a Stormcaller tends to be tends to be locations where you're better off just pulling out your hand cannon instead. That's part of the reason why Stormcallers are so annoying, because the way you have to play against them forces you in these situations where your weapons tend to be ineffective or not as good as you want them to be. Also why when shotguns were really good, Stormcallers were your bread and butter shotgunner class, because they were just better at it because of their extended melee range. They put you into a location where you got one shot well outside of one shot range, but the melee just hit you from, you know, middle of nowhere. So here, instead of moving into our opponent, what we're going to do instead is move away from our opponent. So sidearms, you need to always be creating negative space. You always need a gap between you and your opponent. So when you get in a sidearm engagement, what you don't want to do is push into your opponent. You just want to slowly backpedal. You don't necessarily need to shade step back because that might put you too far away. So just a backpedal is normally enough. If you're running against a shotgun, if they're in this range, you're probably dead anyway, so it doesn't matter that whether you can shade step back or not. You just want to backpedal best you can and put as many shots in your target as you can. If they decide to continue to push into you, like our opponent doesn't, but if they decide that they're going to continue to push into you, that's when you can follow up melee. And that's when you want to follow up melee. You don't want to force that melee out. Because you're going to have a better chance of killing your target if you just continue to create that space, as opposed to putting them in melee range as well and potentially trading with them. So as good as that first sidearm engagement was, we let the other opponent push us in the second sidearm engagement, and they just shotgun us. If our opponent didn't have shotgun ammo there, you know, we would have had time to pull out sidearm, possibly ended up in a trade, but because they had shotgun ammo, sidearms are going to lose in that range a lot, almost every time. You really have to outplay the shotgunner if they put themselves in that range against your sidearm. So again, we're just moving around the map. We're really actively searching out our opponents. You know, when we get close or close-ish on radar, we're kind of holding back, getting more passive zoning here. Finish off our opponent. This is one of those situations here where it would have been better if we shade stepped to the right. If we were in this position here and we shade stepped around this pillar, we actually could have challenged this player instead of waiting till we're right next to Tube. Right, Tube is right here. We could potentially be flanked from either of these directions. Here, like that's no good. So we still get in a decent engagement, but it could have been cleaner. If your opponent self-reses in front of you like that, you don't want to hesitate. You need to go one direction or the other. You either need to challenge that player, which is normally a bad idea, but sometimes you have no choice, or you just immediately want to run away. And that's another opportunity for you as well. Like, he got caught reloading, so he didn't give himself an opportunity to really get that challenge off. But like I said earlier, if we have shade step, we should be shade stepping as soon as that engagement finishes. As soon as it's done, we're out. We're gone, right? We're shade stepped into our cover. If we had shade stepped immediately after this, we wouldn't be locked in this reload animation. We could have potentially challenged that player, or we would have had a better opportunity to leave. So again, more active with our shade stepping. Be much more aggressive with when you do it versus when you don't. Here, you know, we can shade step around that corner to challenge this person. As soon as we finish that, we should be shade stepping into cover. Some really good passive zoning. Unfortunately, we just get tagged in the back. Not a big deal. It's Rumble. That's what happens. We would definitely have killed our opponent had we not got shot in the back there. So I chalk that up to a win. Here, again, nice patient aim. We didn't get the kill, but we hit the shots we did. A little wasted super. Not a huge deal. So this is a defensive shade step. This is another way you can use shade step, is if you've lost a fight, you want to move from cover to cover to get into safety. Because right now, where we are on the map isn't the safest, right? We're here, and we can potentially be attacked from a lot of different angles, especially the one that we're already currently being attacked from. So if we can limit where we're being attacked to 1 or 2 places instead of, potentially 4 by just shade stepping, right? If we shade step here, then we block off this area here, we potentially block off this area here, and we're only going to attack from this area. That's going to be a better option than just trying to run away or wait. All right. So again, right back to that aggressive movement. We're not waiting around for anyone to show up. We're going to them. And then once they show up on radar, we're trying to decide how we want to engage them. So here, really nice 3-tap. Reload and cover. Get a nice stick. I mean, unfortunately, we just have someone right behind us. But that was a solid engagement. Here, we're a little late on our shade step. Remember that if anytime someone throws a tracking grenade or a bolt grenade, so bolt grenades being arc bolt, firebolt, and axiom bolt, any of those grenades, as well as tracking grenades being skip grenade, shade step breaks those. Like, they don't work anymore. So we want to be really, really fast about dodging. The faster you are, the more ineffective those are going to be, the more ineffective your opponent's going to be, and the more powerful that you're going to be, because your abilities aren't going to be rendered useless. So speed is of the essence. We want to be practicing that. So if you aren't already, you should probably be practicing some shade step drills just to get used to it. Just to get used to it, or just going into a game and with the sole purpose of, after every engagement that I get into, I'm going to be shade stepping. So that engagement there kind of highlights why, or the downside of sidearms, they're really hard to push players with, because if they just backpedal, then you could potentially lose if you don't do max damage, or if you don't give yourself enough time to shoot enough, or if they see you as you're pushing. Here, again, if our opponent had just tagged us once with anything or followed up melee'd, we would have lost or traded that outright. So if you see someone, you want to back up a little bit. You still want to make sure you're getting that first shot off with your sidearm. And there we just end up getting outgunned, really. When you throw smoke, you generally, if you see your target, you want to be close, really close to your cover. And you'll really want the ability to immediately move into it, if you can. Okay. Ooh, wrong one. So that is going to be the episode for today. Kind of chock full of information I threw at you. I'm not going to do any in-game stuff just because the last episode I did was another Exodus Blue one. So if you want to go watch that one for more Exodus Blue tips, feel free. If you want, as usual, if you want to support the stream, you want to get some tutoring, you can always become a Patreon backer. And, patreon.com/Crucible Bootcamp. Sign up for there, get some tutoring, get some one-on-one time with me. And I have a whole curriculum worked up. So for new students, for returning students, I work with you on some very specific things, and I'll work with you specifically for your goals, like if you want to go to Lighthouse or anything like that. I work with you on getting up to that level. And as it has been for the entire time that I've done it, all that money goes right into the wedding fund, which is rapidly approaching. And hopefully it'll be all done, all planned out here pretty soon. You guys have been, as usual, I know I haven't done a video for quite a long time. Kind of going through some personal stuff on a lot of spectrums. So I'm glad to get back into it, get back to helping you guys. Destiny 2 is right around the corner, so I'm really stoked for that and really looking forward to just writing out the rest of this game, helping us gear up for that and getting ready for that when everything changes, and I'm sure it will change. And I look forward to that. But till then, I'll still send me your gameplay. I still need stuff to review. I have a couple things before I finally run out, but I'm getting pretty close. So if you want to send me 3s, if you want to send me Rumble, Trials, I'm starting to dabble a little bit into 4s. I still don't feel super comfortable with the level of review that I would give like a Rumble or a Trials match, but I feel like it's good enough that I can do it on stream now. So if you want to send me 4s, like a competitive match, feel free. And you can always send those to Keen, Keen, at cruciblebootcamp.com. It goes right to my email address. Yeah, but as usual, I've been your host, King Koala. This has been Crucible Bootcamp, and class is dismissed. I'll see you guys next time.